USA. You will hear a short message about them here in a minute. This program takes a tremendous amount of effort and cost to put on. So you purchasing an amazing gift from the flag shirt will help us do that. And so stand by for a word, and then we'll come back to Steve Stern in just a moment. So stand by for a word from the flagshirt.usa.
What defines the American spirit? Preserving life, liberty, and pursuing happiness. Caring for the nation we call home and its people. As patriots, it's our duty to drive the entrepreneurial spirit, pushing hard, reaching for success, sharing patriotism, because the American way of life is for all to live.
I'm Steve Stern, CEO of Flagshirt.com, a third-generation, veteran-owned small business. I believe that the American way of life is for all of us. I'm asking you today to visit Flagshirt.com. Help keep the American dream alive.
The Flag Shirt, where freedom reigns.
Thank you for that message from the flagshirt.com. And Steve Stern, over to you.
So we want to thank everybody for coming on this time. We want to thank some special people, especially the War Room. This wouldn't have been live, but 10 months ago, Steve Bannon put it on the War Room. We have to thank him because that way we started getting podcasters. Today, we have upwards of 160 podcasters streaming this live along with Patriot TV, Stern American, which is my channel, Cloud Hub. And for the first time, TikTok. We don't know how long we'll be on TikTok, but we want to make sure that we get on there. This takes weeks and weeks of preparation. Our last event we had where Raj came down and they flew in to Trump International. Over 10 million people saw this. We're hoping more today because we have more podcasts, there's more people helping us. One of the great things that happened today, every day is a blessing. But today, an unusual thing happened. I was driving to my office, and I was listening to Fox Business, and Michael Whatley came on. He's the head of the Republican Party. So I actually texted him, and I've been texting him for a year or so. He never texted back, but he did text back today, thanking me for letting him know that he did a great job and what's going to happen. Because if we can get the coordination between the Republican Party and the grassroots, a lot's going to happen. So we're going to bring on today some important people. One is going to be the attorney for Tina Peters, and who's going to start right now is going to be Patrick Ellis from the Appalachian Reclamation Coalition. We brought him on, and he's only got about a few minutes to talk what's happening in North Carolina, because I thought that was one of the most important things, because we don't want to leave our people without anything, and that's what's happening in North Carolina, so we certainly need help. So our first guest will be Patrick Ellis. And bring him on if you can find him. He should
Great.
be on.
Patrick, you're up. Go ahead, Patrick.
How are you doing? Thank you for having me today. I really appreciate you. I just wanted to talk a little bit about Western North Carolina. I represent ARC, which is the Appalachian Reclamation Coalition. And what our mission is to try to get these communities to reclaim their futures, get their homes back, get their lives and legacies back. We've been forgotten. We've been forgotten by the mainstream media. We've been forgotten by emergency management. We've been forgotten by everybody. If it weren't for nonprofits and NGOs and churches, there would be no Western North Carolina. You talk about the worst storm, one of the worst storms in the 21st century, the worst storm for the state of North Carolina, affecting over 125,000 homes. 5,800 of them alone just went down the river. We have thousands of people homeless in hotels 6 months out. We've got people that desperately need help. ARC is currently working in the town of Bernardsville, North Carolina, which I would compare it to, Syria. When you drive through, the devastation is absolutely overwhelming. It just grabs your heart. You cannot believe the extent of the devastation. There are people there living in tents in the grass. Their homes are destroyed, if they're even still there. But you're talking about a complete geological change of the terrain. There's people, not only did their home sweep down the river, but their land went with it. They don't even know how to make a claim. They don't have land anymore. These are the people we're helping. Places like Bernardsville don't get talked about. We talk about Asheville. We talk about Swannanoa, where President Trump visited. Thank you very much for that. But, right now we've had billions of dollars allocated for North Carolina for disaster relief, and literally just hundreds of thousands of dollars have made it to the people. This has to be known, and it has to be changed. Just North Carolina, just yesterday, passed a bill where they asked for $2 billion, got 524 million. Yes, 524 million. Okay. Less than 30% of the appropriated monies from the state of North Carolina has actually been given out to the victims. We're asking people to help us, help organizations like ARC, where we made a coalition of nonprofit organizations that are out here for no money, just volunteering our time, our assets, our equipment, our supplies to try to keep these people fed, keep these people housed, and try to help them reclaim their community, get back to some sort of normalcy. I really appreciate being on this show because it gives me the platform to speak to our neighbors, our fellow Americans, and get them to reach out. You can find our website at arccoalition.com. That's ARCOALITION.com. You can look us up, look at our partners that we partner with. You can donate to any one of them in any way you see fit. You can volunteer. You can do both. But we're looking for people to come help us. Come help people in Barnarsville. Help the people in Appalachia. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate that. And we're now just going to do a little change. I'm going to go to Linda. Chris is being delayed, so I'm going to go to Linda Bostinto. Linda, please go ahead.
Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm from the state of Maine, and I'm representing Maine Election Integrity Network. We are a coalition of approximately 30 states, and of course, our mission is election integrity. Every vote, every legal vote needs to be counted. I have a great team, most of them who are on today. Wave hello. Thank you guys for joining, and thank you all for being on this call. We all have the same mission. I wanted to talk about our different groups within our Maine election integrity. We have a legislative group in place, and they are really doing a great job. Their job is to alert the rest of us to any bills that might be pertaining to election integrity. This way we can help the representatives who are sponsoring that bill. Right now, we're working with Representative Campbell with LD 234, repeal ranked choice voting. Only Maine and Alaska still have ranked choice voting. They keep trying to get it in other states, and thank goodness it's usually defeated, or it has so far been defeated. So we are very happy about that. And we'd love to see it repealed in Maine. It's a very confusing way to vote. And I must say that I have seen two of our very good candidates lose through ranked choice voting. It's very confusing for the actual voter. And usually I'm finding there's a lot of misinformation going out to the voters about how to use the ranked choice voting. So that's something we really, really are pushing. We have the ability, since Maine is such a big state, we have the ability to give testimony regarding different bills online. So that helps a lot. And we make a lot of phone calls to the other representatives, asking them to support, in this case, LD 234. Something else we're working on is vulnerable voters. In this case, defined by the elderly or infirm, perhaps in a nursing home. We have found that sometimes people are helping these elderly people and infirm people to vote. They say they're helping them to vote, but what they're doing is helping them vote the way that person wants them to vote. So it's a case of them not necessarily realizing that their vote is being cast for someone they did not really want, not their actual choice. So we do have a team in place. They've started to go into nursing homes and to see if we can have that stopped. That has to be stopped. That's completely illegal to do that. UOCAVA, Uniformed Overseas and Citizens Absentee Voting Act. We do have a person who keeps track of percentages regarding this, and the percentages of UOCAVA have increased greatly. And we do not understand how that could happen, but it is happening. Perhaps I'm going to say that there are a number of people using the UOCAVA system that should not be. We have hearsay evidence that perhaps they are using different websites, bouncing their information from place to place and saying that they're overseas, but perhaps they're not. So this must be stopped. Voter rolls, cleaning up our voter rolls in Maine. It would be nice if people who were deceased or not actually living in Maine were on the voter rolls. Again, every legal vote to be counted. These voter rolls need to be cleaned up. A lot of them are outdated, very outdated. In Maine, it is the town clerk or city clerk who handles the voter rolls. Some of them are very cooperative, and some of them perhaps are not as cooperative as we would like them to be, or perhaps overwhelmed with too much work. But that is something else that really needs to be tended to. We have every 2 weeks, we have a member meeting. Our email is maineein@outlook.com. Please do contact us if you are interested. We would love to hear from you. As I said before, we're a coalition of over 30 states. We do meet frequently during the week with each other to share information and share tips about how they're handling different things. National Election Integrity Network is a wonderful group, and we are proud and happy to be part of it here in Maine. Any questions?
Yeah, how do they get to reach you if they need to reach you?
As I said before, our email is maineein@outlook.com.
Thank you very much, Linda. Next up will be Chris Jersky. We've been trying to get him on for a year. He's one of the busiest guys like me, People's Audit. We're happy to have him here. Go ahead, Chris.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Can you hear me fine?
Everything's good.
Okay, my name is Chris Jersky. I built a system called the People's Audit that got started in Florida by checking to see or showing registrants who's voting from their house. You quickly check to see who's registered, who's voting. And then if you probably heard of a story called Red Belly Road, that's where it really launched what we really are doing. Red Belly Road was a situation where we discovered that a whole street of addresses had their addresses broken to a fake address. And during this time, I think it was the 2022 primary. This was July of 2022. During that time, mail ballots were requested to that broken address and shown as delivered. Very important. We were getting daily updates on that particular data. And then right before the election, about 3 days before the election, the address flipped back. So it essentially made it look like these people knew that they were voting. Unfortunately, when we went and knocked on their door after the election was over, they had no earthly idea what we were talking about. They didn't know that their address was changed, and they definitely didn't know that they were requesting mail-in ballots. That kind of changed the game for us. So we went back and we designed an entire system to watch the voter rolls every month, looking for changes. We have to monitor every single registrant. We watch to see if they've added them to the database or added them to the voter rolls, removed from the voter rolls, anything that's changed, their birth date, their name, their address. And every single time we're validating their address to make sure their address is correct. If you've ever bought anything online and you've basically used Amazon or Google or something like that, you've probably seen a screen that says, can you confirm your address? And you will typically see an extra 4 digits added to your zip code. That's very important because the entire private sector, from Amazon down to the mom and pop that's selling stuff on eBay and Etsy, they all use a system that's called CASS, C-A-S-S. That's the Coding Accuracy Support System. Can't stress this enough, because this is essentially what everybody uses in the private sector to make sure that we don't have undeliverable mail. Unfortunately, the locals didn't even know what it was when we first brought it up to them, let alone use it. So you can imagine how many ballots go undeliverable. And when they do go undeliverable, they're easily harvested either from the post office or actually even from the supervisor of elections office, because they usually wind up getting piled up in boxes and they're not really even checked until after the election. So it's a huge security risk that we brought to everybody's attention with that. That's really the heart of what the People's Audit does. We check those addresses to make sure they're correct. And with that system, again, I can't stress it enough, it's free from the post office. You do have to have some programming skills to use it. And it definitely is a challenge to get 16 million of them checked in about an hour, like we do here in the People's Audit, because we check about 100,000 a minute. But the thing about that is it will tell you if the address is good or not, if the address is a business or the address is a vacant property. That's very important that you can get that piece of information right from the post office for free. And the thing is when your locals are telling you that they don't use it, that should be a red flag. If they're promoting mail-in ballots and they don't use this is a big red flag, because anybody that uses bulk mail is required to use this system. It is essentially required from the post office. If you send mass mail, that you have to use the CAS system before you send out those mails. So it's the fact that they're not aware of it is pretty scary if they're sitting there promoting mail-in ballots. The other thing that we did discover along with that is we've recently reached out into Texas, Georgia, and North Carolina to help them along with their voter rolls. And during that time, with the help of the grassroots here in Florida, amazingly, we were able to clean up 1.2 million bad invalid registrants off the state of Florida. That was a testament of how the grassroots can work together, because it was a combination of the software finding the problems with the grassroots taking that information to their locals, and as us basically making sure the state knew that was aware. We were able to work together with the grassroots, especially Defend Florida, and get laws passed that basically allowed us to get the voter rolls as well as the mail-in ballot request system cleaned off in the state. I believe there was 96,000 bad addresses in our last election, or I would say the previous election before that bill was passed. 96,000 undeliverable mail-in ballots went out for the I think it was DeSantis' race. So out of that 1.2 million that were cleaned off, 1 million were Democrats and 250,000 were non-party affiliates. It turned Florida red for the first time in its history. We actually are now a pure Republican state with 1 million voter advantage. And that's strictly because of the efforts of the grassroots and the People's Audit that was able to clean off all those invalid voter rolls. So we were easily able to get Trump in office with a double-digit lead, and that goes to cleaning voter rolls. It wasn't going out to gas stations and getting people registered and inflating the voter rolls even further. Cleaning the voter rolls is how you basically keep your state red. So I just wanted to make sure you guys are aware of that. The other thing is I wanted to also tell you that it's much more than a piece of software. We go further than that as far as working with, especially Defend Florida for legislation, and in other states, basically listening to the vendors, the agencies that touch our voter rolls. I wanted to make sure people are aware of some new information that we just came out over the weekend. Was if you've ever heard that thing of you will own nothing and be happy, you probably never imagined that your local state government would be involved with that. Unfortunately, we found some information out from a patriot over in Texas, Mitch Vexler, who was arguing with his local Denton County property tax appraiser back and forth, and had multiple lawsuits over probably a 10-year period nearly. In that, they got them to admit under deposition that they the property tax appraisers manipulated 60,000 properties in the state or in the county of Denton, Texas, essentially just went in and fabricated their valuations of their property. And Mitch, being the mathematical savant he figured out that it infected nearly the entire county, because you're checking the register, or you're checking the values next to each other's houses. So ultimately, he estimated that the property values there were overinflated by 40%. The point where this is going to elections is pretty scary, because when you think about what's happening in your local community, and you probably see this in your checkbook already, the property tax immediately pushes up, or I'm sorry, the property values immediately also push up your home insurance rates. The thing that we were starting to uncover when he started pulling on this thread is that the counties are super leveraged. He discovered that Denton County had 20-to-1 bond borrowed on the projections of the tax bills. So if you're driving around and wondering why the county keeps on developing where you're at, essentially they're trying to catch up against all the money that they borrowed. Long story short, if you're following what Doge is doing at the federal government, what's happening at the local government with the property taxes is probably 10 times worse. And the reality is that when AG Paxton tried to basically just get the financials from this school district, they told the AG of Texas to pound sand. So if they're telling the AG of Texas to pound sand and don't want to show them typical financials, do you think there's a pretty good excuse of them not keeping allowing normal citizens to win school board races? I think we found the real reason why they're doing the election rigging. And I just wanted to bring that stuff to your attention because we're starting to dig into that a little bit more, but it really makes the motive behind election rigging really more apparent when you think about that the counties are probably over leveraged with financials and not wanting an average citizen to sit on those school boards. The other reason you're probably seeing all this drag stream story hour and porn in the libraries, it would divert you from having a typical school board meeting, which if you remember one, if you've ever attended it, it's typically they're passing out the budget and talking about the budget. I'm wondering when the last time someone actually saw budget numbers from their local school board. So any questions we have on that?
How do people get in touch with you?
My website is probably the best place to go to is thepeoplesaudit.org, all put together with one words, or you can put hyphens between, either one works. And then on the website, there's a contact form if you want to reach out to me there. I also have links to my Substack and Telegram. I'm mostly posting to Telegram, but I'm trying to get out more on X right now and basically post more on X.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris.
Anything else that you'd like to say? If not, we'll bring in Linda Sinkowitz. We're a little bit ahead, so we're going to stick.
You want to go to Patrick? I believe he's next. Patrick
No,
Mussolini?
go to Linda Sinkowitz because we got time.
Copy that. We're going to Linda Sinkowitz. Stand by. Linda, go ahead and unmute.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. Well, thank you, Steve. Little unexpected, but as always, I'm here if you need me. I'm Linda Sinkowitz from Fight Voter Fraud, and we have been cleaning voter rolls across the country. What I've mentioned in the past is the free data that we're going to be giving out. I had expected that we would have had it by now. This is for the double registered double voters across the country. But we seem to be having issues with a number of states that have not bothered putting in their November election information. And in order for us to do this accurately, we need all that information. So we do appreciate everybody being as patient as you have been in waiting for this data. I've tried keeping everybody up to date. Everyone who has sent stuff in, you would have at some point received an email from me acknowledging that I received your request. So that is coming. If we don't get the stuff in the next few weeks, we may just end up sending you the double registered in the meantime, and then have to do a follow-up with the double voters. The other thing that we're going to be doing is we are actually going to be setting up trainings. We have developed our election integrity book that will show you exactly what you need to do in order to prove it's that person, and then be able to bring it to your law enforcement or your election officials. Shortly, you'll be seeing something on our website concerning that. If anyone has any questions in the meantime, you can email me at Linda, Linda, at fightvoterfraud.org. And right now, we're pretty sure Florida and Texas are going to be our two first ones that we will definitely be doing some training on. So if you have an organization and you have about an hour and a half to 2 hours, we can set things up, come down, train you, and then you can actually research all the information yourself instead of coming through Fight Voter Fraud. We've spent 6 years working on developing a number of things, and I think we got it now. I'm pretty sure we do. So the only thing that's been holding us up, Steve and Raj, has been the waiting for the voter rolls with the updated information. So hopefully I filled enough of your time, Steve.
Linda, you talked about some of the people in Connecticut being arrested for voting twice, and they went to court, to the Supreme Court. What has happened there on that?
Oh, that was actually, they were arrested. That was Wanda, the ballot stuffer that everybody has seen across the country. We used a little known law back in November of 2023. We wound up in the Connecticut Supreme Court May 1st of 2024. Basically, the law had said that if 3 electors find that another elector violated any election laws, and they had the evidence and they signed the affidavit, they can then go directly to a superior court judge who shall issue the arrest warrant. So Wanda, by the way, had been arrested in 2019, which they're finally in the courts, but they keep postponing that because this isn't the first time that she had done this. So we had the hearing, like I said, on May 1st. In October, our Connecticut Supreme Court came down with a finding. They decided to rule, first of all, on standing and not the merits of the case. And they said that our 3 electors, our 3 Bridgeport voters, were not harmed in any way by the actions of Wanda and the others. But get this, based on Massachusetts law. Now, I'm in the state of Connecticut. Our Connecticut Supreme Court could not even use the Connecticut law to define the case. They had to use Massachusetts law. And when we submitted, can you look at it again? Our Attorney General Tong fought so hard not to have it heard again that was it. That was it. So we already know, as many of you across the country know, that our Attorney General is absolutely against our Constitution and does receive awards from the Communist Party in the state of Connecticut. So does our governor. So do our wonderful senators, Blumenthal and I forgot the other gentleman's name, and I kind of use that a little loosely. So they're not really doing anything to support our Constitution, our election laws, absolutely nothing. But you know what? We're not giving up. There's a will, there's a way, and we're going to be coming up with some creative ways of forcing them to do their jobs and the Secretary of State to do her job, which she is not doing either. Mind you, this is also a Secretary of State, when she ran, said on live television that fraud was acceptable, and they elected her. So this is what we're dealing with in Connecticut, but I know there's other states that everybody is really working hard, doing great things, including, I got to always pull out Greg Stenstrom. He's been on your show a number of times, Steve. He is doing phenomenal work. So he's another one to look at. He's out of Pennsylvania. So like I said, we're working hard. We're working on a number of things. And as soon as we get all the voter rolls, it's making me crazy. We'll be sending that free data out to everybody. So again, if you want to reach me, it's Linda, Linda, at fightvoterfraud.org. That's .org. And our website is www.fightvoterfraud.org.
Thank you very much, Linda.
Thank you.
Normally, when we have these Zoom meetings, everybody wants to speak longer. On this particular meeting, they're giving us a little bit of time, so that's good, because I want to come up with a couple announcements before our next guest. So the first thing is, if everybody can see this, Raj, can you put me on?
Yes, you're on full screen now.
All right. So if you go to sstern1054gmail.com and you have a speaker that would like to come on one of our Zooms, we always try to get new people on. And also you can call me at 954-318-6902. The other thing is I'd like everybody to follow me on Stern American on Rumble. And the reason is we're going to be putting up a lot of information. Raj and I are going to be coming up with a lot of information because we find the communication around the country seems to be going through X. We're on every social media, and Melissa, who is helping tremendously get on all social media because Steve Bannon told me, hey, you got to go on every social media. I am getting texts from a lot of new podcasters that are coming on saying that the people that are watching are really enjoying this, and it's the first time they've ever got to see it. So if we have 10 million people on and we can double it to 20 million people, we're going to get more and more speakers, and we're going to get more and more people that want to come on and do that. The other thing is I've been on many programs talking about Dan Schultz, Steve Bannon, 14 years of precinct strategy. We will have some people talking about it for a long time, but Dan Schultz worked 14 freaking years on getting people involved. If you go to www.precinctstrategy, you can find out how to get Dan's book. I am the vice chair of the Broward Republican Executive Committee. So, you know, I see what's going on. And I got to tell you, our chairman, Chris Marino, is working 12 hours a day to turn Broward County red. And we're going to have him on. He was on last time, but a couple of times to tell you what we're doing and how you can do it in your community, because we're using texting, we're using emailing, we're using door-to-door knocking, we're getting the people out. And we have a success story in that we got 40 new members here over the last 2 months. And that means that people are finally coming out and doing it. So we're running close to the time. You want to get our next guest?
Yeah. So Pat McSweeney is going to be coming on in just 2 minutes here. So please pay attention to those announcements that Steve mentioned. Please also save the chat. There is so much good information coming at you in the chat. So please take advantage of that. Also, what I'd mentioned in the last call that we did from the Trump International Golf Course is, as you can see, there is so much good information on these calls, a lot of technical skills. So what we are trying to do is trying to train our peers and even get better ourselves here at Defend Florida on how to apply political pressure. As an example, right now, we've had a team now for 3 weeks in our state capitol. They wrote legislation that will address vote by mail issues. They wrote information that addresses also the citizenship vote. We have people that are voting who are not U.S. citizens. And this type of legislation has been written. They were able to get these bills sponsored, which is fantastic. And now, just to share with you, there is now the shenanigans taking place where these bills have to be placed in front of a committee, and this is going to apply to your state as well. If you get your bills written, great. You get your bills sponsored, great. Next step is you have to get the committee that's been assigned to that bill to put it on the agenda. So now, when our volunteers are there, they go to the committee chair and say, hey, could you please make sure this bill gets put on the agenda? Then they say, oh, well, the sponsor hasn't made the request for that bill. So you then walk over to the sponsor's office. Hey, the committee chair says they haven't received a request from you to put the bill on the agenda. Yes, we did. We did it last month. We did it again last week. So a deliberate effort, and remember, this is a Republican state, Republican governor, Republican Senate, Republican House, and the establishment is in some ways, very motivated to keep the grassroots silent. So how do we play the political game? How do we take their own strategies and apply it on them to win? So for that reason, we've come up with something called the TrumpLeadershipBootcamp.com, TrumpLeadershipBootcamp.com. You see it up there. If you're interested, please go to that website, put your information there, and you can apply to attend that training session and also receive information about that, TrumpLeadershipBootcamp.com. So with that said, let's go back to our scheduled speaker. And we have Pat McSweeney. Thank you for waiting, Pat. You are up.
Pat is the attorney for Tina Peters. Now, this particular call is in honor of Tina Peters. Hopefully, Pat can give us some updated information.
As you no doubt know, Tina was convicted last year and sentenced in October to 9 years on 4 felonies, 3 misdemeanors. Excuse me. We immediately applied for release on bail pending appeal and was denied by the district judge. We appealed that to the Colorado Court of Appeals, and without a statement of any kind, simply upheld the decision of the district court. So she has been in prison, first in Mesa County, and was transferred from Mesa County Jail to Larimer County in Fort Collins, Colorado. She's been there ever since. She'll be going to the Colorado Department of Corrections soon. In the meantime, we filed an application for writ of habeas corpus. Several reasons were assigned. The 2 principal reasons are, first, that because Tina was carrying out a federal statutory duty, which is the duty to preserve election records. She was entitled to federal immunity under the Supremacy Clause. It's a seldom used claim, but it's nonetheless a valid claim recognized by the federal court in Colorado in a well-cited, well-respected opinion. In addition to the federal immunity claim, we also insist that the reason for her sentencing was explicitly because of her statement challenging the reliability of the voting system in Colorado, in Mesa County in particular. It's very important to remember this is protected speech under the free speech clause of the First Amendment. A state cannot punish or convict someone for expressing their belief, even if it's unfounded. But in this case, she had not only a strong founding for it, 3 highly certified, qualified experts had examined the records that she had obtained, and those were not obtained in violation of law. She did not violate the law in making copies of the Mesa County system, but it was beyond doubt that the court sentenced her because of her speech. It also denied her motion for bail pending appeal based on her speech. That is obviously an unconstitutional action by the court, and we've asked the federal district court in Colorado to release her on a writ of habeas corpus, which the state is aggressively opposing. But in the meantime, the Department of Justice filed a statement of interest focusing primarily on the First Amendment issue and insisted on being able to participate in the case. The state has objected to that, move to dismiss that statement of interest. That will be briefed in the next 10 days, and we'll have a hearing on that on April 22nd. But we expect to get a decision from the court on her release based on the federal habeas corpus application, at least by the end of the month. Then we have an appeal of her conviction going to the Colorado Court of Appeals, which will come shortly after the action by the federal district court on the habeas corpus application. Finally, an application to the governor of Colorado to pardon her will be filed primarily based upon the disproportionality of the sentence, the illegality of the sentence, and her condition. She's 69, 70 years old now. And this is unconscionable action by this district court to sentence her to 9 years for a non-violent offense, even if she had been guilty of it. After we have the appeal, I think it'll be perfectly obvious that the denial of due process, the denial of her First Amendment rights has been demonstrated convincingly in the trial court. And I think that the brief will be a strong one, which we intend to file at least by the middle of next month.
So if people want to help Tina, give us some ways they can do that. I know a lot of people have come out with videos and everything. I've never seen a country get behind a person than they have Tina Peters. And, you know, we would like her to get out. I know that Mike Lindell was up with President Trump here a couple of weeks ago, turned to the president, said Cleta Mitchell. President Trump turns to his attorneys and said, get her the heck out of jail. So I know that's happening. So how do people donate to her fund? Give us a little bit of background on that.
The best access would be tinapeters.us, on Tina Peters' website. Unfortunately, the president has limited ability to direct anything as president, other than have the Justice Department participate in this case, the federal case asking for release based on habeas corpus. That has been a welcome addition to this case, and it's obviously affected the attitude of the state attorney general. In the meantime, when she files her application for pardon, people can certainly apply to the Colorado governor, asking him to act favorably on her application to get her out right now. It's simply this would be more than simply releasing her. This would be a pardon. And the reasons are pretty obvious, and will be obvious even more specifically when we file our challenge to her conviction in the Court of Appeals.
If people would like to get a hold of you to get more information, how do they do that?
Well, they can email me at patrick@mck-lawyers.com.
So one of the things that I've heard, I know that so many people have got behind her, that if nothing happens in the next 2 weeks, we need to have a national call to the governor of Colorado, because what they've done to her is so bad that, you know, people have to step up. The more people that step up, you know, the better it's going to be, because this woman's been in there for what, 5 months now, been treated terrible.
Since October, yes.
So, you know, and most people that are convicted like she was allowed to be out on bail. They won't even allow to be on bail, which is horrendous. We also realized that she had COVID, and we also realized that they put her in cells with 25 people. I was lucky enough to speak to her in jail. I heard the other day that a lot of people said they spoke to her and that she's in better spirit because she knows that the whole country is behind her. So if you speak to her, just let us know that everybody on this call, could have been up to 10 million people. They're waiting for instructions to really help her. So
I know she appreciates it. I do talk to her. Her will has been unbroken, but they have done everything to target her, including the other inmates have been targeting Tina. So it's been a rough go for anybody, but particularly a woman who's a cancer survivor, Gold Star mother. It certainly was doing what she thought was her duty under federal law to preserve records. So she is obviously buoyed by all the support she's getting, particularly from the president.
Well, thank you very much for being on here, and give her our best when you speak to her. Our next up is one of the most important people in the United States, the founder of Election Integrity Network, Cleta Mitchell, who is my favorite person in election integrity, has pretty much given up her life to spend 12, 14 hours a day. People tell me she has no personal life. I know once in a while she gets over to Europe to see her daughter. And I want to say that of all the people I've ever worked with, Cleta Mitchell is one of my favorite. Thank you so much for coming on. Raj, can you see if she's on? There she is, the lovely lady of my favorite person in this country.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I always learn so much from all of you, and I appreciate all the things that everybody's doing. I've talked a little bit about this before, and I want to just go over some things again. I think that here's my view. I mean, for those of you that don't know me, I'm an election attorney. I practiced in the field of election and political law for many decades. Was a partner in a law firm in Washington for 20 years, and had practiced previously in other firms, my own firm. And what I did full time was political law, which includes, it wasn't limited to election law. And I was one of President Trump's volunteer attorneys after the 2020 election in Georgia. And we brought an election contest in Georgia, challenging the outcome of the election based on Georgia state law. Every state has an election contest provision as part of its election code. And we were very careful about including only specific I've done election law for many decades, and I know that you have to be able to show each and every vote that was illegal, irregular, violated state law, etc. And so we filed a 64-page complaint on December 4th of 2020 that detailed had 1,100 pages of exhibits and expert witnesses, and specifically indicating which votes were not cast in accordance with state law. And so we filed that complaint on December 4th. It's supposed to be expedited. It is supposed to be heard immediately. The presiding judge of Fulton County, Georgia, which is Atlanta, where we were required by the state constitution to bring the action, since the first defendant was Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, as the chief election officer. And we filed it there, but it is not allowed to be heard in Fulton County because the law requires that a judge from another county has to be appointed to hear the case. And so something happened with that case that I've never seen before or since, and many attorneys that I've worked with agree they've never heard of this before or since. But we did not get a judge appointed to hear the contest. So when people say, and when you hear people say President Trump lost all of his battles, all of his election lawsuits, well, he didn't lose ours because he never got his day in court in Georgia. And I've seen the reports that these left-wing, some rhino Republican attorneys have put together about supposedly this is their analysis of all of the litigation filed on behalf of President Trump following the 2020 election. And guess what they said about our case in Georgia? Nothing. They didn't even mention it because they couldn't, because they couldn't say that President Trump lost everything because we didn't get a judge appointed. But there were so many irregularities involved in that. And one of the things that I have been working on, well, I'll just say this. So because of my relationship, because I've represented President Trump, and because I was on the phone call with President Trump and the Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, and I just want to make sure everybody understands something. When the president said to Brad Raffensperger during that call, we just have to find 12,000 votes. Well, we'd already found them. We had many more than that. We had 30 categories of illegal votes and fraudulent votes and irregularities. There were 18. Remember that the margin between President Trump and Joe Biden was only 11,779 votes. And we had identified and included in our lawsuit, there were 18,325 votes cast from addresses that the Postal Service said were vacant. I know Chris made a note earlier about the data available from the U.S. Postal Service for use in comparing to voter rolls. And so that's one of the things we used. And it was the most current of the Postal Service information. And when running that against the votes cast, because you get the list, you know who voted and the address from which they voted. And there were 18,325 people who voted from addresses that the Postal Service said were vacant. Well, that one category was sufficient to have had that election thrown out and have another election. That's the remedy. And Georgia was having another election on, if you'll remember, January 5th of 2021, because they had a U.S. Senate runoff. The point being, so we had a conversation. So we had more than enough. The president President Trump was never saying, go find or go fabricate these ballots or these votes. And that's, of course, what the left-wing media has always said. They always refer to that, and they say the president was trying to get Brad Raffensperger to commit fraud. That is exactly the opposite. We were just trying to get him to do his job. But in any event, so after that, then I ended up leaving my law firm. The left-wing Lincoln Project came after me. And so I spent the last 4 years doing nothing but working on election integrity, because I'd been working in this field for many years, but there were no citizens who understood what was going on. It's a lot like when parents woke up during COVID and started watching what was going on with their kids in the classroom and started going to school board meetings. It's the same principle. People like all of you, people all over the country woke up to the reality of the fact that we had actually allowed the left to take over our election system from top to bottom for decades. So it has been very gratifying, but also challenging as we go through the situation with regard to trying to wrest control of our elections back for the people and away from the left-wing interest groups. And we're seeing all of this play out in real time in Washington as we see all these left-wing organizations, these NGOs who are getting a lot of our tax money. And the left has spent billions of dollars over the last decade or longer changing our election system. So what does that mean for us today? I mean, I would say I consider that the last 4 years have been election integrity 1.0. And now we need to move into election integrity 2.0. Because now we know, many of you know, because of all the work you've done, we know what's wrong. We know what needs to be fixed. And I will tell you the biggest challenge that we have is that we have very, very, very bad election laws in way too many states. And even in good states, we have bad laws. And so, I can just go through what the Election Integrity Network has done. I appreciate what Linda was saying earlier, thank you, about the Election Integrity Network and the national working groups. And I really would urge any of you who are interested to sign up to be part of the working groups, because we have people from all over the country on those concentrating on specific topics, everything from cleaning voter rolls, dealing with trying to stop non-citizens from voting. And that was really an effort that we established last year, is to try to make people aware of the threat, the imminent threat of millions of non-citizens voting in last November's election. I will tell you, I woke up in January of 2024 and just all of a sudden realized, oh my gosh, this is how they're planning to reelect this vegetable in chief. They're going to just try to get all of the illegals to vote for Biden. And so we started the project, got the SAVE Act prepared and introduced. I went to Chip Roy, great constitutional attorney in the House, and Mike Lee in the Senate. And we wrote the bill and got it introduced. It passed the House in July. It's going to be back on the floor, I think, next week. But now we need to take it and make it go further. It's not enough. It's not enough. We need to remove the federal laws that have broken our election system. And I have been spending hours and hours and hours on the federal statutes and proposing literally point by point repeal, revision, changes to the federal statutes and adding in new ones. And I wanted to mention to you the U.S. Citizens Elections Bill of Rights. That can be found at www.votefair2026.com. That's votefair, FAIR 2026.com. And in that, I asked all of the leaders around the country last November to develop what they thought were the things that they had learned over the last 4 years of the changes we needed in the laws. What needs to be changed. And from that, we compiled all of that, and then we came up with these 10 principles of what needs to be changed in our statutes. And one of the things that I think is really important to know is that, and I've spent some time talking to the president's people about, I talked to them before he was inaugurated about an executive order. One of the problems with an executive order is that virtually every problem that we have with election statutes, with our elections, is by statute, either federal or state or court decisions that have arisen under and interpreting those statutes. And so I'm going to go real quickly through the federal statutes that I think we, as people who care about elections and we know there are problems, I want to go through the ones that need to be changed and why. The worst, I would say the two worst are the national, well, there are three terrible ones. None of them are great, but there are three really bad federal statutes. Number one is the National Voter Registration Act. That was Bill Clinton's number one priority, HR 1, when he was president. It's what we call the motor voter law. Why is that a bad law? It is a bad law because it basically directs that states will register people to vote at all these different social services agencies. That's where people started getting registered, at the Department of Motor Vehicles, but I'll come back to that in a moment. But the biggest problem with it is that it does not set parameters and confirmation requirements on the authenticity of the registrations. That is addressed later in the Help America Vote Act. I'll talk about that in a second. But the worst part of the NVRA is that the Republicans only agreed to vote for it because they got added to it list maintenance requirements, which is voter rolls, maintenance of the voter rolls. And there are a couple of good provisions in the NVRA with regard to voter rolls. One is that they must be public. I'm working with the state of Utah right now because they have a law that allows people to not have their names disclosed. And that's a big push from the left because they want to stop all of us from being able to have access to the voter rolls. So they're working on making them that one of their bill HR 1 in 2021 would have put the voter rolls behind closed doors where we wouldn't be able to keep trying to clean them. So this is a struggle, but NVRA says they must be public and the list maintenance records must be public. But it also creates barriers. It creates blackout periods. It does not specify that you can remove invalid names. So we had the Department of Justice under Biden suing Virginia and Alabama last year, saying that they could not remove non-citizens who came forward and said, I'm a non-citizen, take me off the rolls.
Cleta, 2 minutes. 2 minutes, Cleta.
Okay. Oh, well, sorry. Anyway, the point is we have these terrible federal laws. NVRA needs to be completely amended. The Help America Vote Act, that's the one that was passed after 2000 election by Congress that replaced all of the lever and punch card machines. And we need that law to be completely overhauled and forced replacement of any voting machine or equipment that has remote access. There are states that say you can't connect it to the internet, but if it has remote access, they're going to connect it to the internet. So we need to change that. But if you look at the Citizens Bill of Rights, the Election Bill of Rights, we have all of the principles and all the things that must be done. We need to separate UOCAVA into military personnel and overseas citizens. Those are not the same. They were combined by a bill by Chuck Schumer in 2014. We need to decouple those. There's a lot that needs to be done at the federal level and at the state level because we have a lot of bad state laws. And so if you would be interested in joining with us to try to help get this accomplished, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of granular, important work. But if we don't get these laws changed, we're not going to be able to see the kind of progress that we want. A lot of the failings that we see are because of these bad federal laws, and that's what the Citizens Elections Bill of Rights is intent upon changing. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Cleta. We love you. Next up is the man of the hour. If I could hug him right now, I would. It's the reason we have all the people on our Zoom. About 10 months ago, I was on Steve Bannon's morning program, and he said, Steve, we're going to put you live on Getter in the War Room. Since then, we've got 160 podcasters, 5 TV stations, people all over the world are listening. I could talk about them for an hour, but Steve, you want to come on?
Yeah. Can you hear me, Steve?
I can.
Thank you. Great technology. Listen, I'm honored to be here today. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but as you can tell in this fight that we're in now with this judicial, coup d'etat insurrection, everything that's happening on this very violent color revolution, whether it's in a Tesla dealership or doxing Tesla owners, these very violent demonstrations that are going on in college campuses, and particularly like in the atrium of Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue in the heart of Manhattan. These swattings that are going on, doxings going on, the murder still unsolved of Alex Jones' producer. If you look at everywhere, we're in a fight. Look at what's happening in Wisconsin right now. I mean, that's going to be a dogfight. $100 million is going to be spent or more at the end of the day. But you guys are leaders of a patriotic movement to save our country. And I realized that the evening of the 5th of November, it was like nirvana. People were ecstatic, and they should be. And then with the inauguration, the celebration, and understanding we had saved the country from its wreckage. But we are a long way from winning this thing. And the opposition to this, the money that's coming in, how they're fighting President Trump, I mean, in every aspect. This afternoon, he's going to do something that's historic, that we've talked about as conservatives since Ronald Reagan. Actually get rid of the Department of Education. Why? It's a funding mechanism. It's $250 billion a year funding these colleges, these woke colleges, just like we're taking away the money laundering operation and the EPA, like we're taking along the money operation in USAID. We're cutting off the radical left that hate this country from the sources of at least your taxpayer dollars. But it's the fight every step of the way. What is this going to mean? Particularly even if we win Wisconsin, it's going to be razor close in 2026 to take back the House and to impeach President Trump and start all this madness over again. The central thing is the fair elections, the election integrity you guys are working on. You're the tip of the spear. And I can't tell you how much people appreciate, what this team is doing and how we're trying to make elections fair and honest and to make sure they can't steal it, because they are so worked up right now that they are traumatized, but they're coming back 5 times harder than they were before. They're going to try to use these neo-Marxist judges to stop President Trump. It's actually I call it a judicial coup d'etat. It's worse than an insurrection. That means the elections going forward are going to be close. They're going to be razor thin margins, and they're going to try to do everything they possibly do to steal it. Now, you guys here with Cleta, Steve, and the rest of the team have the best people in the country on this issue. We just got to keep driving forward. And anything I can do, anything Board can do, anything my network of people can do, we're here for you guys because you're doing the Lord's work. And as you can tell every day, I'll make a prediction. President Trump signs that executive order today at 3:30 in the Oval. At 4 o'clock, he's having a special presentation with school children and teachers and parents in the East room of the White House. Will probably take some questions. They will be in federal court to sue President Trump before the war room comes on at 5 o'clock. That's how this thing's going to roll. That means it's all going to get back to elections, and they're going to try to thwart him while he's in office, and they're going to try to steal every possible election they can, particularly in the House and particularly the presidency. So, we have our work cut out for us, and I'm honored to be a part of this. And we're here always to have your guys back and to make the platform available to you guys.
So, Steve, tell us, how do we get the communication better in the United States? Your program, I'm on there all the time. Everybody's listening to you. And people around the country are not getting the communication out what they need. In other words, the RNC doesn't communicate with the grassroots. The Trump campaign doesn't always communicate with the grassroots. How are we going to get the communication together? We need you on here for about 15 minutes. You have a lot of history. You have a lot of knowledge. Most people don't. Nobody understands how you know so much. Expound on some of these things.
Well, listen. It's always, first off, just a major communication, as you know, given that it was just announced that Newsmax just settled for $40 million just for Smartmatic, not even with Dominion. Obviously, more mainstream media coverage is just going to be tough, given the fact of settlements that people made from Fox and other people. That's number one. Number two, I will sit down with Steve, with you, and a select group of maybe your executive committee, and I will work out that you have better communications with the RNC and better even with the White House political operation. That should be relatively simple to work on. You have to remember, you guys are working in an area that's absolutely vital, but as you know, and I don't need to tell you, it scares people off. The election integrity scares people off because the first thing they do is they attack you guys as being conspiracy theorists, being election deniers. That's why that's what you guys go in my category as the patriots, because I know it's very difficult work. It's sometimes it's drudgery, right? This is not sexy, right? It's not high profile. That makes it even more important why it's got to get done. It scares a lot of people. People don't want to be associated because they can't take the heat of, look at Cleto. Look at the people working on this. Look how they've been smeared. Look how some have been destroyed, debanked, deplatformed, right? Their reputations ruined, driven from their law firms, driven from their places of work. You guys know what you've had to suffer, right? Steve Stern, hits on your business. I mean, look at President Trump. President Trump yesterday, if you saw the Laura Ingraham interview, he says, what he said about, the 2020 election when I think they're walking through the Rose Garden. And remember, always and everywhere, remember this. He said, if I knew I hadn't won, I wouldn't have run again, right? If he'd just been beaten fair and square, he won. He says, I knew if they hadn't stolen it, I wouldn't have run. And she was like in shock. And Fox, I'm sure, was freaked out about playing it, although I saw it on a tape later. It was the number one story of Mediaite and everywhere else. That's what President Trump is absolutely committed to this program. But look how he gets deplatformed. Even before he goes on certain media, they don't want to deal with it. I did this thing with Gavin Newsom the other day, really to make sure that he, essentially in front of me discounted the California model and agreed with populism. But the biggest thing that came out of there is that I started off by saying, hey, Trump won the 2020 election. And Gavin Newsom didn't try to rip my face off, and the left went nuts on him. Actually, some people said he disqualified himself for running for president because he did not confront Bannon saying Trump won the 2020 election. And I said it very matter of fact, but hey, it was like, I have no question about this. President Trump won the 2020 election. If you look around, you see how few people do that. You guys know because you were there when it was stolen, and that's why you've dedicated a big part of your life to make it work. So it's not going to be easy, and people run away from this more than anything else, I think, because you get called election denier, you get called a conspiracy theory crank. But remember, Trump said it on Fox. If he didn't know in his heart that election of 2020 had been stolen, he would have never run again. That's why it was to set things right, and that's quite frankly why you're the special forces of this entire movement.
You speak to the president quite often, and we talked about Tina Peters. How in the heck are we going to get out of jail? What do we have to do on your program, on everybody's program? We have 160 podcasters that are streaming this, along with 5 networks, along with everybody under the sun. We're on TikTok today. You did something for me that nobody else did. You said to me, and I asked you a question, what is the most important thing for me to do? And you said, get a hold of social media. Well, we're all over social media. We hired college students. We hired high school students to help us on social media. For the first time, we are on TikTok right now, and we haven't been thrown off yet. And Tina Peters is the most important thing in my wheelhouse right now because she is innocent of everything. What is your suggestion on what we have to do?
She's not simply innocent of everything. She was correct in everything she did. That's the thing. Now, here's what I would say. Behind the scenes, there's a tremendous amount of work going on. And I think as a group, we're going to continue to push it, but we shouldn't go to DEFCON 1 yet. And here's the reason. When President Trump went to the Justice Department, and just let me give you some background on that. Remember, and I think the New York Times got an article about today about President Trump's consolidation of powers, their lead story. This unitary theory of the executive, where President Trump is making the case that he is the office of the president, and he, as fulfilling the office of the president by the Constitution, is the chief executive officer of the United States government. Therefore, if an appropriations bill gets passed, he doesn't have to spend the money. That's the ceiling. He can make discretion. He can make the judgments about impounding money or doing other things. He also can let people go. He can fire people. He can terminate people. He can downsize. He can rip people. Number one. Number two, he's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Therefore, if he designates a group of criminals as a terrorist organization, he can put them on planes and send them out of the country to wherever he wants to send them as commander-in-chief, and nobody can get in the way of that. Number three, he's the chief magistrate and chief law enforcement officer in this nation. And therefore, if he wants to go to the Justice Department at any time and talk to the Attorney General or any local head of SDNY, U.S. Attorney in D.C., U.S. Attorney in Arizona, whatever, he can have direct communications, and with the head of the FBI because he's Chief Law Enforcement Officer. When he went on Friday, Todd Blanche, who's the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, Todd Blanche said that he is working on, in the one case he brought up was Tina Peters. So President Trump, I will tell you, President Trump, my belief is spending a tremendous amount of time on this to work at a quite complicated situation. But Tina Peters is top of mind of everybody. We got to keep her top of mind. And if something doesn't shake in the next couple of weeks with her tremendous attorney, Pat McSweeney, Todd Blanchard was working on it, then I think we have to go to DEFCON 1. And DEFCON 1 is, I think we have to, all the media, all the podcasters, we have to have demonstrations. We have to go because we can't allow a woman to stay in prison where she is, particularly at her age and at her health.
So I have a lot of texts coming in from podcasters all over the country saying we'd like to have Steve Bannon on our program. Naturally, I don't want to give you a number out.
I'm available. Just go to Mo Bannon. Don't give her a number out, but Steve, you know her very well. Captain Bannon does all the coordination for this, and I'm glad to come on any podcaster in the country's podcast and help you guys build traffic and become a bigger entity. I appreciate all the podcasters. You guys, listen, the podcasters, and particularly the young podcasters are coming up, are the reason that one of the main reasons and the main communication reason we won the 2024 election. So we have to build that. The left doesn't have this. You guys are doing an amazing job. Keep working at it. And the War Room is here to help you guys 24/7.
So we have about 6 million people that we can tell that are on this call right now. That is a big audience, and we're hoping we get 10 million. We want to thank you so much because you started this on the War Room with getting us 38,000 people on our first call about 8 months ago. What can anybody do here to help you that is on this call? Because you help everybody in every aspect.
No, I think it's very simple. Just do what you're doing. It's your task and purpose. If you use your agency, look, a populist movement is not from the top down. President Trump's our leader. He is, I think, one of the most unique individuals in the history of this country. I say it all the time. General Washington at the birth of the nation, President Lincoln at the rebirth of the nation, and President Trump in the return America to her former greatness. Those are the three greatest individuals we've ever produced. He is put his entire life, been assassination attempts, bankruptcy, 375 years in federal prison. They wanted to die in prison. This guy's put it all on the line. And what I appreciate is everybody just out there every day, just do your task and purpose. If you're a podcaster, podcast, share other information, just work every day. Do what Steve Stern's an inspiration to me. Hell, Steve's actually older than I am. He's in his 80s. Now tell me, he's the most ambitious 80-year-old. And you understand, Stern is on me 24/7. He's texting me. He's telling me, got to do this happened. It's fantastic. Just do that. This will be, look, when this era is talked about, they're not going to talk about Elon Musk and Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity. They're going to talk about two things. They're not going to talk about Rachel Maddow or Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or any of this. They're going to talk about Donald Trump, and they're going to talk about the MAGA movement. That a New York billionaire from Queens and Manhattan led the greatest populist movement in the history of the world, and he had inspired a nation to not just return to its former greatness, but to lead the world in a time of the beginning of a third world war, to lead the world to a century of peace and prosperity. So just do what your job is every day. Use your agency to its fullest, and we'll turn out all right.
Well, thank you very much, Steve. I had one request. If you could stay on for a few minutes. I got a guy coming on, John Goodman, who has helped me. He's in Broward County with me. He wanted me to let you know he'd like you to hear him for a few minutes before you get off. I know you. Thank you.
I'll stay on. Let John rip, and good. You guys are killing it. Just keep rolling.
Well, I don't love too many people in this world, but you're one of them that I love, and I want to hug you. I'll see you soon. All right. Next up, John Goodman.
Hey, thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you for staying around, Steve. And I want to just tell everyone we've got such a big audience from international and here in the United States. It shows how many people really care about election integrity. I'm John Goodman from Hallandale Beach, Florida, and I'm a graduate of the University of Louisville. I'm homeschooled in politics for the last 40 years, and where I really became involved was in 2016. I had my whole life, I've been just watching the shows as a teenager while my friends were watching MTV. They're like, that's pretty weird. But I've always had a thing for politics. So nevertheless, in 2016 is when I turned up the heat, because as many of you recall, Hillary Clinton received the questions in advance from Donna Brazile from CNN to that debate with Donald Trump in the 2016 campaign. And at that point, I said, I'm turning up the heat. And then I saw Donald Trump with a Russia, 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 even though the special counsel said there was no collusion. They kept on. And then, of course, the phony phone call that Zelensky said was normal, they kept on and on. So I decided in 2020 that I was going to stay up all night and I was going to pin my face to that screen and I was going to look for anything crazy. And something crazy did happen. And this is why I wanted Steve and Cleta Mitchell and the rest of the Patriots on this call to know. And Steve is aware of this. Michigan had originally in 2020 declared Donald Trump the winner. Go back and look. Michigan was colored red in 2020 for about 90 minutes. And then it was changed to clear. And I snapped the pictures before and after. And I took them to my local people. And they all laughed at me and said, no way. And it was Steve Stern who said, send me the pictures. I'll look at them. I'm not promising you anything. And he brought me on his show. And there were a lot of people watching. And all of a sudden, I started hearing from a Fox anchor. And I sent them the pictures. And they vetted them and said, we're not denying the pictures. They're legit, but we're not going to use them because Donald Trump's leading and we don't want to throw a monkey wrench into him. So that's how that happened. And that's what got me involved. And then I started a weekly series on X called John Goodman Comments, and it has really ballooned up my followers, the reposts. I met Steve Bannon's daughter, Maureen, at the Republican Invitational. So the message is getting out. My two focuses with Steve's Florida, it's all of ours, but Steve's the leader of the Florida Election Integrity Committee, is two things. The weaponization of our judicial system. Obviously, Tina Peters. I mean, think about it. Why would you have any objections to retaining voter information if everything's on the up and up? Why would anyone have any objection to that? So we know Tina Peters is innocent. And you could look at the Donald Trump trial. There's statutes from A to Z that the judge violated, and Governor Hochul, as oversight, didn't step in. And we can talk about that another time. But Donald Trump was cheated, I know, in Michigan. I can't speak for the other states, wouldn't surprise me. But that's how I got involved with the Election Integrity Committee. My primary focus, though, is on mail-in ballots. There used to be absentee votes, remember? You had to be unable to get to the polling station. Overseas military, overseas civilian worker, hospice, hospitalized. You had to have a reason. Now you can be 25 years old, healthy as can be, a fitness expert, and you can get a mail-in ballot. And I appeared on Rumble last week, and I would like everyone just to watch this 1 minute and 50-second, very short clip. I think Raj has got it hooked up for me, and then we'll address it after the clip. Okay. We'll come back to the map, but yeah, let's look at the quick 1 minute and 50-second video, 1 minute 50-second video, if we could, please, Raj.
Mail-in ballots, as Stephanie said, it was marketed by both the Democrats and the Republicans as a one-time deal because of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. But it hasn't been a one-time deal, has it?
No.
Mail-in ballots have become into the fabric of our voting system that's over 200 years old, with no legislation, no constitutional amendment, no votes whatsoever. And we're not talking about changing a law, some mild law that the State House just did. This is major stuff here. There were over 4 million fraudulent mail-in ballots in 2020. Some, no verified signatures. Others, phony signatures. Others, the postmark had been tampered with. And there was hundreds of thousands that did not come back in the return envelope that they're supposed to, that are coded. And those are counted as votes. But they were. In 2020, they were. And now we see mail-in ballots floating around like baseball cards with no legislation. And the question is to the Republican media, to our senators, our governors, our congressmen, our congresswomen, why isn't anyone asking, how did mail-in ballots become part of our voting system with no laws passed?
All right, can everyone still hear me?
We can. You got 3 minutes.
Okay, so I would say to Cleta, the reason I wanted to bring up Michigan is I saw you at the Capitol with that delegation from Election Integrity in Detroit, and I actually have those pictures, and Steve and I have communicated about that. But as far as mail-in ballots, look, and I'll address all of us. We can get voting machines under control. We can do everything under the sun. But if we don't handle mail-in ballots, we're still not going to come up as the winner. There's been no legislation. The media is missing in action. And where's our Republican officials bringing it up? You know, the Democrats love mail-in ballots. They're happy that we're not talking about it because in a close election, mail-in ballots is their magic bullet for pulling out the win. So they love that it's under the radar. Why, after we got bitten in 2020, no one is even mentioning mail-in ballots, and we are poised to get clobbered in the midterms because of mail-in ballots. So I would ask Steve, Cleta, all of you on this call, and make sure President Trump knows that those pictures exist, that he wasn't whistling Dixie about the 2020 election. But the bottom line is, I've seen my own state senator, and I'm going to say his name, Rich Scott, him and Byron Donalds on the campaign trail last summer, mail-in ballots. Oh my God, we got to stop all this. It was absentee vote. But now it's like the cat's got everyone's tongue, and we're going to get burned again like 2020. So I thank you for your time. Mail-in ballots is number one issue because we can do everything under the sun. But if there's millions and millions of fraudulent mail-in ballots, all our work on the voting machines and passing bills in the legislature and all of that is still going to come up short. And that's my message to everyone. My ex address, and then I'll be done, Steve. Thank you so much. I do a weekly series called John Goodman Comments. We've done a lot of good stuff. Last week, it was called The Republican Media Missing in Action. But it's at John Goo, at JOHNGOO, 77697793. One last time, Steve, and I'm concluded. At JOHNGOO, 77697793. And I want to thank everyone here because everyone is doing their part. And then when we come together, I just know we're going to get the results and we're going to have our country back. Thank you, everyone, so much.
Thank you, John. Now we got our famous guy, Joe Hope, and he's going to be talking, I think, about Orange County and what we got to do to win in 2026. Joe, you up?
Steve, for having me. Great to see Steve Bannon, John. It was nice hearing you as well. And it's an honor to be here as always. Got a few messages. One, we're gonna be dropping a big bomb on, and not physically a bomb, but a truth bomb. Sometime here, I believe within at least the next 48 hours, that's going to blow you away on the elections, which I think is going to change the entire narrative of this discussion. From this point forward, it's going to blow people away. And I say that based on some information and some experience in the past. As you know, I've written a number of articles at Gateway Pundit on the 2020 election. I came into this arena coming after being doxxed and by Media Matters and coming back to the States in early 2020 because I was right about COVID, and I came in and started attacking what was happening in our election right after the 2020 election. And it was an absolute mess. And you guys know my background was in audit and finance. We've talked about this before. And one piece, not sure what that is.
I don't know.
That wasn't me. Yeah, that wasn't me. Anyways, one piece of information I wanted to share today is, and I started thinking about it, is Andrew Weissman is this scoundrel of a prosecutor. As many of you know, he goes back 30 some years. I've been writing about this guy named Michael Sessa, who was indicted by and prosecuted by Weissman 33 years ago in a sham trial, and he's still sitting in prison today. I've been trying to get the word out on freeing this guy, but Weissman, what he did in the early 2020s is or early 2000s during the Enron deal, is he indicted Arthur Andersen, and Arthur Andersen was one of the biggest auditing firms in the world. There's top 5 at that time. Arthur Andersen the next day went under. They lost all their business. About 5 years later, after 80,000 people had lost their jobs, what happened was the Supreme Court looked at the case and said, no, Weissman, you were wrong. You couldn't do what you did. 9-0 went against Weissman. That's Andrew Weissman, but the ramifications of that has been carried forward to this period in time today. Weissman, I see somebody saying he indicted Martha Stewart. He was behind the Russia collusion sham. He was part of this whole Enron deal, and his career's gone 30 years. But by indicting Arthur Andersen and shutting them down, I think what the damage that he severely caused was in 2020, none of the big 4 firms would step in and say, hey, we're willing to take a look at this. We can tell it's going, it's sour, and we are willing to take a stand. And nobody did. None of these big 4 firms did. And that was absolutely what we needed. We didn't need attorneys. We didn't need military guys. We didn't need anybody else. We needed professional auditors to take a look at this and offer an independent opinion like they've done in corporate for years. So one point that I want to bring up is that Andrew Weissman caused severe damage back in the early 2000s because we didn't get those firms to stand up, because why would they? They saw what happened to Arthur Andersen, and they would, the writing's on the wall. You stand up against this deep state and people like Andrew Weissman, your whole company's going under. So that's one piece of information I wanted to share today. As I look back at it, I don't think anybody's really pointed that out, but that's a real significant event that didn't happen in 2020 and could probably be tracked back to the ultra corrupt Andrew Weissman. A second piece I wanted to bring up today, and I've shared that here, I shared it on Steve's show too, is the fact that we are not fighting just against getting enough people on our voter rolls that are legit to vote. I think that's one of the stupidest things we could really be ultimately promoting as the only answer. And by the way, John, I think your idea about mail-in ballots is spot on. I think we need to get more people on voter rolls and sign them up, legitimate people, real people. I think we need to look at these machines, get rid of them. We need to go to same-day voting. I say we need to do it like the Italians, and the Italians have one-day voting, one day only. If you miss it, tough luck. If you want to go to Monte Carlo, that's your deal. You're not going to get a chance to vote. And that's how, of course, we should be doing it. I think everybody's in unison with that. Get rid of these machines, voter ID for sure, and all the other things we talked about is the answer. Get rid of these mail-in ballots, like you said, John. So, but in the U.S., we've had this election industrial complex is what we named it. And it's this huge conglomerate of entities now, these NGOs, many of them being funded by our government, that has prevented us from having free and fair elections. And we talked about that. We uncovered this chart a couple of years ago, and it's just shocking. And I look back at my books on the 2020 election steal, and the first book was about what happened before the election, the second what happened during the election, and the third book afterwards, the cover-up. The thing that grabs me is we were fighting this industrial complex for some time, and we didn't know it. It's huge what we're battling. It's like a 5th generation warfare. I had one expert looking at what we're up against, hundreds of entities formed by these Democrats to run our elections. So it's much, much bigger than what we know. So simplifying this is absolutely essential. Now, thirdly, I want to bring up Orange County because been looking into Orange County for some time now since the election. What happened a couple of days after the election, I was notified that they needed help. I put a piece up. We put it up at Gateway Pundit, and President Trump retruthed it. And that Friday night, as President Trump's truth came out earlier in that day, hey, Orange County needs help. There was a bomb threat at Orange County. This bomb threat has never been addressed to this day. And we don't know who sent it. We do know it was sent via email. We've had a look at it, but there's no information that they found who did it or that they are charging whoever did this bomb threat. We've also found out, I looked at 54 bomb threats across the country in this last election. Nobody's talking about it. It's like the Butler assassination. Nobody talks about it anymore. This is significant events and it hasn't been addressed, and we need to address this kind of stuff. But then in Orange County, we started looking at other things. The night of the bomb threat, 2 white vans showed up. We reported that, and it reminded everybody of Detroit in 2020. It's significant. And by the way, why wasn't there a big vehicle there? Orange County is the 6th largest county in the U.S. by population. It's a huge county. It has more than 3 million people. It's got 1.8 million people on its voter rolls, and 1.4 million people voted in that election. But as we looked at the question there is, why is there just 2 little tiny white vans and not a big hazmat truck that was there when the bomb threat occurred? We also received video from that night. We find people walking around as if nothing happened during the bomb threat. We actually found one person shoving ballots through 3 times on video. We've got other individuals that have done the same. So what's going on there? Another question that we raised was the numbers. We started looking into these numbers. We find out that they actually issued 2.1 million ballots in this past election. They only have 1.8 million people on their voter rolls. What's the 300,000 extra? How many? That's 300,000 people that received 2 ballots. How come that's not a big deal? We asked the individuals in Orange County. They came back with a response saying, "Oh, that's because these people came in and voted, and we gave them another ballot." But regardless, there's 300,000 people in that county that received 2 ballots. The key is that this county had 6 U.S. House seats, and 5 of them went blue. And this is a traditionally red county. It's been conservative for years. Anybody that's been there, it's a beautiful place just south of LA. Like I said, the 5th largest county, or the 6th largest county in America, and it went blue. 5 out of 6 Republicans or representatives are Democrats. How does that figure out? Why aren't people screaming about this? What we found out is they have ballot harvesting, they have drop boxes, they have a law in California you can't ask for voter ID. They say you can't challenge it. The observers can't challenge. We've talked to people in Orange County that said they found all sorts of signatures that were garbage. Can't say anything. You could get thrown out and even arrested if you do. So they really don't have any challenging. And then they've got these garbage voter rolls. So there's going to be a lot more on this to save their space. They tried to put together a document called a grand jury document that they ran through their supervisors of the county. It's a bunch of garbage, and the numbers didn't even tie there to the final numbers that were certified in Orange County. So yeah, you're right, Steve. There's a lot more to look at. We're going to come out with some breaking news in the next 24, 48 hours. It's going to blow you away. And like I said, I think it's going to change the narrative of this whole discussion. And like John mentioned before, a lot of people are talking about elections now where we weren't back in before 2020. So that's a good thing.
Joe, you send out a lot of information out. How can people reach you to get this information? Because you know how I believe in communication. And I want to thank somebody that put this on today, MYSCGOP.com. That's South Carolina. He put this for the first time on his site, and we're getting tons of people on it. We're just getting information from all over the United States about people asking questions. It'll take us about a week to answer all the questions. So one thing they're asking is, how do they reach you? Because you do send out a lot of information. It's great writing. I guess it's you and your brother, or is it just you that do that?
Yeah, both of us. So you can reach me at either the Gateway Pundit, or I have a site called joehoff.com. You can reach me there. Also have a show at now it's named Untamed Nation. It used to be Conservative Daily, and at Lindell TV. So I'm still there as well. But yeah, the best way to reach me be through joehoff.com. I see there's Cheryl Frink saying hi. Thank you, Cheryl, for all the work you've done out there in Orange County as well. So yeah, appreciate all the support you can give us there, Steve.
Thanks very much, Joe. Now we're going to bring on every show that we have. We try to bring on somebody from Precinct Strategy. I want to thank Dan Schultz, because if it wasn't for Dan Schultz, I probably wouldn't be doing this. He wrote the book, and I don't know if you can see that, Raj. You got me on the screen.
Back on the screen, yes.
All right, so we're going to bring on a young Republican, Steve Carr. He's going to be talking about Precinct Strategy and what he's doing in Pennsylvania. One of the young Republicans. He's a fantastic guy. He works with Dan Schultz all the time. So come on down, Steve. Tell us a little bit about Precinct Strategy.
Thank you for having me on, Steve. So I am an elected Republican committeeman here in York County, Pennsylvania, and a York County Young Republican as well. I was elected in 2022 in the election and with 400 votes. And what we're doing, what has been going on in Pennsylvania so far is that we just recently had our PA GOP election and caucuses for the chair, which it was a 2-1 vote for a Rhino against a Trump supporter, mega grassroots chair. And it was only because it was demographics. Everybody in the Central Committee voted for them, and it's only 31% mega in the PA GOP. Most of the grassroots, and then on top of that, we have a election coming up here in the primary, which is coming up, and we had two conservatives run for Commonwealth Court and one for Superior Court, and they both got the no endorsement, and they decided to endorse a throw in the ring. Nobody knows who they are, and endorse them, kind of fill in the blank candidate, and endorse them over the grassroots mega conservative, and then to fire back at them, we actually got both candidates onto the ballot despite the endorsement, because it's democracy and we need to have choices on the ballot. So all the grassroots got together and got 1,000 signature petitions for each and one of the conservative candidates. I'm also on the ballot as a school board candidate, coming up with a slate of 4, running against a bunch of cross filers. And so that is pretty much what we're doing. And you guys probably don't even know him, but his name is Bill Bockenberg. He's a billionaire here in Pennsylvania in Lee Valley, and he was the guy that the grassroots wanted for the PA GOP. He's going to try to come up with a plan B to make a second party run against the Rhinos, because the now chair is a Democratic Republican, even in the Cumberland County GOP, who actually threw out a couple people because they wanted to make a motion and for secret ballots in the PA GOP, and actually escorted them out with ununiformed sheriffs of the county, which is against the U.S. Code at this time. And so it's pretty much a dictatorship in Cumberland County in Pennsylvania GOP. But here in York County, we are definitely pushing for our school board candidates and our Commonwealth and Superior Court. And I'm trying to think what else is going on here. So
Yeah.
Okay, well, don't come near
so that is pretty much what's going on. But basics of this is that if we don't get involved and we don't start recruiting people to the precinct strategy, to bottom to the top, that we won't save our country. If there's no precinct committeemen, there's no Republican Party. It is that simple. We are the most powerful office in the country, and not not the U.S. president and not the senators or the congressmen, but we are because we get each and every one of those candidates on to the ballot, and without our help, they wouldn't be on. So, any questions or anything, you can reach me at True Social is Real Stephen Carr, X is Real Stephen Carr, and my Facebook is just Stephen Carr. You can look me up. If you want my number, I'll post it in the chat, and give me a call. Yeah, give me a call and text me. I'll see how I can help you guys out. Thank you for your time.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Stephen Carr. We're now going to Rocky. Rocky, you're up. Go ahead, Rocky. Rockford. Go ahead, Rocky.
Rockford, yes. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good, and you? Welcome
Very
to the show.
good.
Please
Thank
go
you
ahead.
for having me.
Thanks for being here. Go ahead.
I ran for Florida Congressional District 14, U.S. House of Representatives, and me and my team. I'm a retired U.S. Navy captain. I spent 33 and a half years in the U.S. Navy, faithfully serving our country, and we ran an honest campaign, straightforward, and we were convinced that we had won. Hillsborough County, especially, had really just become very red, and so we had no doubt in our mind that we had won the election. And lo and behold, on election night, we didn't lose. We didn't win the election. We lost. As a matter of fact, NBC called the election before before the Hillsborough County had published any of the results. So pretty odd. They must have a really big crystal ball. Anyway, so we immediately started looking, and we uncovered a whole lot of fraud. I mean, that's really, it's very unfortunate that we have elements today in our country that are utilizing illegal fraud and fighting against the disenfranchising voters. I'm sorry. So when I say fraud, most people think fraud. Well, what happened? Did they miscount something? Did they, what was the fraud? Did they bring in a bunch of other ballots? Oh no, we've uncovered many tentacles of different types of fraud, all under the auspices of the election, and it's pretty amazing. You have no ballots. These are people who ordered vote by mail ballots without providing any identification. In the state of Florida, that's illegal. You cannot order a vote by mail ballot without providing your social, the last four of your social, or your Florida driver's license number. Well, lo and behold, across the election in Florida, there were about 600,000 or 592,355 requests for ballots from folks that had not provided any identification. How do we know that? Well, there's a document that is maintained by the state up in Tallahassee, and all the supervisors of elections take their vote by mail ballot request data and they send it up to Tallahassee, and it's kept in this database called the vote by mail ballot report. And so we did nothing to the report. All we did was get a legal copy from the state. We took the copy, which is in text form. We sorted it and counted. So if you think that, well, there was probably a number of anomalies because I've heard a lot of things in the past about, what could have happened. So let me tell you, there were two very specific days that are very important. September the 9th and September the 13th, 4 days apart. On September the 9th in Pinellas County, there were 198,000 requests in one day for vote by mail ballots without providing any identification. One day. 4 days later, in Miami-Dade County, there were 242,000 requests for vote by mail ballots without any identification. That accounts for all but about 150,000, which were spread across the rest of the state. Here in Hillsborough County, there were over 5,000 that were requested. So if someone wants to try to say, hey, this was a clerical error or something had happened, explain the two anomalies. They don't add up. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So what have I done? What have I been doing? We filed a legal a lawsuit against the state of Florida. Unfortunately, the state of Florida cannot overturn a congressional election. Only Congress can do that. So there's this. It's under the Constitution, and it's called the Federal Contested Elections Act. And so we submitted a package up to Congress, to the U.S. House of Representatives, and we also sent a package to the state of Florida. The state of Florida is still before a judge up in Tallahassee, because District 14 covers both Pinellas and Hillsborough County. So that we have to ensure that both counties are covered. So you have to go to Lee County to do that. So that is ongoing. The judge has not thrown it out yet, which is I think I'm an anomaly on that one. And Peter Tickton is representing me in that case. This case with the House, we submitted it, and they have there's a deadline, a statutory deadline that it has to be submitted by. And it has to be submitted within 30 days of Florida certifying the election. Well, guess what? Florida never published when they certified the election. It was nowhere to be found, because we knew once we had the date, that started our clock ticking. Our stopwatch would start going, and we'd know we have 30 days to submit it. So we never found it. It was never. We had to do a FOIA request to find out when it was actually certified. And I don't even think that every county had stopped counting ballots by the time that this happened. So we submitted it to the House, and the House sent back, and it said the committee recently passed. So it went to the House, the clerk of the House. The clerk of the House sends it to committee, which is the Committee on House Administration. And the committee recently passed a resolution to dismiss my contest because I missed the statutory filing deadline. So in the law, which has only been used 3 times, by the way, in the entire history of the country, all 3 of the cases before didn't meet the deadline either. Matter of fact, one of them was never requested. It was Congress who initiated the process. So we just submitted today, back up to the U.S. House of Clerk's office, a petition that says, "Hey, we want a petition for a waiver on the date," because it's been granted every time. In all of three times that it's been enacted in this act. I mean, the fraud is as I had said when I started, the fraud is clear and concise. It's astonishing how far they went. You not only had those no ballots, people requesting ballots by mail without identification, but then you had the hidden code inside the voter rolls where they would go on and they're called clones, and they would turn a clone on, have the clone vote, and then turn the clone off. And we have the evidence. Somebody in Peter Tickton's office, he hired, guy's name escapes me right now, but he's the one who wrote the algorithm to go find all those clone votes. Then you have the ballots that when you finish filling it out and you put it in the machine, and it gives you a receipt to show you how you voted, right? Your machine, your ticket says you voted on all these votes. But when you go into the computer, it shows that you voted nothing. So it's a blank ballot. But the problem is that we can't get the blank ballot counts from Pinellas or Hillsborough County. And oh, by the way, the Senate just submitted a SB 1414, and in the House it's HB 1381. And these laws, they want to turn over control of the elections to an NGO. So in Florida, you wouldn't be able to count anything anyway, because the NGO holds all of the cards when it comes to elections. This is on a good-bad scale. This is terrible. I mean, why would we give over to it? And we're just learning about how bad NGOs are. I've known that, being in the government for as long as I have. I've known that they are terrible. So I don't know what to say. I mean, this is my case. I hope that they will recognize the error of their ways, because there's a case law that says you're supposed to grant me an extension because we found we didn't have all the evidence anyway at the 30-day mark after the election. As a matter of fact, fraud is still coming in. We're still identifying more and more fraud. So that's in the law that says that if you find more evidence, that will grant you an extension. Well, they didn't do that. So in a Republican-controlled House, in this committee, there are 8 Republicans and 4 Democrats. How could they turn it around and send it back? I don't understand. Laura Lee she's the co-chair for the committee, and she's also the subcommittee chairwoman. I'm really scratching my head. This has been like I'm fighting with my own party the whole way here. I mean, I haven't seen anyone lift a finger to help me. Peter Tickton, thank God for him. He's the only one who really stepped up. But anyway, so if you have any questions, I'll pause there. You're muted.
I want to just make sure people have a way to get in touch with you. So if you just let people know your email address.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I just put it into the notes section.
Excellent. And just read it out, because some people are listening to this in their car. So just
yes. So it's Rocky at Rocky4Congress.com. And then my website is the exact same thing, Rocky4Congress.com. And then 4 is the number 4. So so we still have a heck of a battle, because with the clear and concise, irrefutable evidence that we have that there was fraud, I can't understand why the House doesn't want to conduct an investigation and bring up the folks that have uncovered all this evidence. I mean, it is irrefutable. I'm baffled.
Thank you for being on the call, Rocky. So appreciate it. Lisa's going to be coming on in a minute.
Yeah, Lisa
is
on. Can you find her?
Lisa, if you could join the audio, please. I saw you just a minute ago. You are not there now. So she was here just a second ago. Steve, maybe she disconnected. If you get back on, and I will play another message here while we're waiting for Lisa to join. Lisa DeBen will be coming here in just a moment. Meanwhile, again, this event today has been sponsored by the Flag Shirt website, the Flag Shirt Company, and also trumpetleadershipbootcamp.com. And here's another message from trumpetleadershipbootcamp.com.
November 2024 was only the beginning. You know, the 2026 primaries and the 2028 presidential election will decide America's and Trump's legacy. The establishment and the left are already preparing to push us back in 2026. The question is, are we? That's why we're building an army of leaders, patriots who will fortify Trump's policies, win key elections, and stop an establishment takeover. Train now. Win 2026. Secure 2028. This is more than a campaign. This is a movement. And if we don't lead, they will. Step up, train, and win. Join the Trumpet Leadership Bootcamp. Because America's future depends on you.
Thank you for that. Trumpetleadershipbootcamp.com. Lisa Bennett, you were on audio. I see that you're not. Oh, there you are. Go ahead and unmute, Lisa. Then unmute.
Thank you for allowing me to join the call. So I want to introduce myself to everyone. I'm Lisa Bennett from Montana, and a lot of people think Montana is this great red state with a red supermajority, but we have the same issues as everyone else. We really are a purple state, and we've got our own issues with approximately 9 to 10 senators out of 50. Montana only has 50, voting with the Democrats to thwart conservative legislation and move forward more progressive Democrat legislation, including expansion of Medicaid, expansion of Medicaid. And so we even have our, what we call the leader of this pack of 10, who is suing the Montana GOP for $5 million for distress over the fact that certain central committees have censured him and that he's been rebuked by the Montana GOP, which, by the way, was not an easy feat. In our Montana GOP, we probably have 50-50, maybe a little bit more leaning conservative, which are members from our central committee, but the rest of them are establishment people. So the leadership, our chair, did not want to rebuke, but so many members complained that they did. But we're not sure, is this $5 million lawsuit just to basically bilk the Republican Party of money? In other words, will they be like Fox News with the Dominion lawsuit and just settle to be done with it, and then that $5 million will be split amongst these establishment people? In other words, was this planned? We don't know, but that's the rumor that's going through. So Montana has its share of issues. I will say at the Central Committee level, we're having a hard time with conservatives that want to take seats but aren't actively involved like they should be. They don't understand that if they're not the ones on the street meeting with people and getting things done, that vacuum will be filled by the establishment, or worse yet, the Democrats. We have one Central Committee in our state where the Central Committee members, most of them, admit that they're Democrats, right? And that they're in the Republican Party, but they're okay with that. We've got one who's donated to Democrats, and she's proud of it. She thinks the Democrats are better candidates. And that's someone who was the secretary and then the treasurer of that Central Committee. So Montana has its fair share of issues as well. What I'm here for is I think that the conservatives or the Freedom Caucus, whatever you call yourself, the constitutionalists across the United States, we need to get together in an association or some kind of group movement, because we need to protect each other. There are certain things that are happening in Florida, Arkansas, Missouri, Colorado, Montana. I could name the states that may be similar to what's happening in your state, may not, but we need to be aware of it so we can, if we do have the votes, we can change bylaws, we can elect new people, we can know what's going on. One thing we've done in Montana is we've kind of mimicked what Missouri has done with
we lost Lisa.
Go ahead and put on Kim.
Okay, Kim. Go ahead, Kim, and unmute. Go ahead and unmute Kim. Kim, if you want to, there you go. Kim, you are unmuted. Go ahead and start speaking.
Do you have my PowerPoint?
I do.
If you want to pop that up there, that would be great.
You got it. Give me about 10 seconds. Go ahead and start, and it'll be on in about 10 seconds if you could.
All right. So I would like to say hello from behind enemy lines in New York State. I'm president and co-director of Project Civica, and the fight for New York is on. Hochul represents everything in the election system that's wrong in New York, but she's just one person. The entire system in New York, government overreach, mismanaged priorities, disregard for law and order, overtaxation, you name it. It's a problem in New York State. And people from out of state always tell us, well, you guys all voted for it. But I say, did we really? Next slide, Raj. I wanted people to see this. I wanted people to see the voter turnout in the last two New York State governor races. Basically, in New York, we are being governed by a majority of the minority, all right? Over 50% of registered voters did not vote, which means in the last governor's race, Hochul only won with 23.9% of registered voters over Zeldin. Most people have checked out of the election process. And again, we're being governed by a majority of the minority. And the reasons why people don't, they're varied. It's everything from the system is rigged, my vote doesn't count, lack of time, just to name a few. Next slide, please. In New York State, we are ruled by the Democrat Party, and we have to ask, where is the GOP? The Democrats have controlled the assembly since 1975. We haven't had a Republican governor in 20 years. The GOP lost control of the Senate in 2017. Just in 2024, they lost 3 congressional seats, even though there was a large shift to the right of voters in New York voting for Trump. The graph I have up here shows the uncontested seats in the New York State legislature for the last 3 cycles. 54 uncontested seats where GOP had no candidates in 2020, 48 in 2022, 52 in 2024. So, the GOP seems non-existent. Next slide. Project Civica is a 501c4 nonprofit civic action organization. We focus on engagement, action, and civic education. We are a young organization. We were founded last year, January 2nd to be exact, by 5 co-founders who were involved with another election integrity audit group. When we took a look at what the problems were in New York, we realized that just auditing voter rolls weren't going to solve the problem. And so we took a look at the whole system in New York and are trying to change it and fight for New York. I think we are, or I believe we are, the only New York conservative civic action organization completely focused on the political and election process in New York State and trying to change things. We're a group of volunteers and we collaborate locally and nationally with many other groups. Next slide, please. Last year, we jumped into action on the ground running. We had an extensive poll watching program. We trained several hundred poll watchers, and I think we actually were the first group in the United States that the RNC had their poll watching training with. They did a Zoom call with us back in, I think it was the end of February, and for the special election, or not special election, the presidential primary. And since then, they ran some trainings with us and then jumped off on their own. We continued training. We deployed poll watchers in over 25 counties. We have had a voter roll data research team that jumped up and started collecting voter rolls every month. We had a Fill the 48 candidate recruitment program or initiative where we tried to fill some of those empty slots. It would have been a lot more if we hadn't recruited 17 people, 17 candidates. We had a political platform for candidates called the Common Sense Contract with New York, which was modeled after Newt Gingrich's contract with America. Some of you might remember that. We have done hand counting training in New York, and we have people who are trained to hand count ballots in over 25 counties. And then we also did get out the vote efforts from candidate recruiting to sending postcards to working with Turning Point Action using their app. This year, if you could go to the next slide, Raj. This year, our goals are, and this year and next year, right? Because the next election in New York for governor is in 26. Our goal is to restore common sense in New York and end single party dominance. We are big into committee strategy. My co-founder, Steve Gillen, has been on the show twice talking about what we're doing, especially in New York City this year. And for us, we don't have precincts, so we call it committee strategy, but basically it's Dan Schultz's precinct strategy. We're advocating for leadership reform within the GOP. We are working on a common sense contract for New York City. Many of you may know that there's a race for mayor, and we're working on that with many people in New York City. We have a strong legislative watch and voter advocacy group. Even though we're a blue state, believe it or not, there's actually some legislation that aligns with our goals to support and mobilize the public in support of it. And if it's destructive election integrity legislation, we try to mobilize people against it. And then we also are supporting national election integrity legislation. Advocating for that will help put pressure on New York to move in the right direction. Next slide, Raj. We, of course, are advocating for secure and transparent elections, voter ID, hand-marked paper ballots, accurate and up-to-date voter rolls, comprehensive and independent audits, nonpartisan poll watchers, and elimination of a barcode-based voting machine they're trying to bring into New York State. New York State actually has hand-marked paper ballots, the gold standard. They are trying to bring in express vote Excel machines where you use a summary card and your vote is encoded in a barcode, and we are actively fighting to stop that. It's been a tough battle in Suffolk County. Just I think it was last week or maybe the week before, the legislator voted to allocate $34.6 million to expensive machines. This is actually a bipartisan effort. There's a number of left-leaning groups that oppose it as well, and we're working with them to oppose this. Next slide. We also are really into civic education. We just hosted someone who ran Understanding Your Municipal Budget, which is kind of the local version of Doge, so you can understand how your local municipalities are spending money. We've run trainings in open meetings law, freedom of information law, of course, the hand counting ballots program that we continue to run, and even just recently teaching people how their legislature runs. It's amazing how many people don't even understand that. And so we're trying to educate people on that. And we work really hard partnering with other organizations. Like I said, we're a new organization and we had to leverage that last year and this year. So we have been working with Cleta Mitchell. She was on the show earlier. We're always on her EIN working meetings, True the Vote, Cause of America, and then some organizations obviously in New York State. Next slide. And our election integrity efforts, because I know this is an election integrity call, we again this year are focused on our nonpartisan poll watching program. We're going to have a special election in New York 21. We're hoping to be up there watching and providing oversight. We continue to oppose the ES&S express vote Excel machines. We're looking at a legal action currently. We have a very strong voter roll research team. A few of them are on this call, so I want to give a shout out to everybody from Project Civica that's on the call. They're identifying, addressing inaccuracies, and what makes us different, I think, than some other groups in New York is we actually are collecting voter rolls every month, comparing the differences. And what started as a program that was just going to be, let's find the low-hanging fruit, dead voters, has turned into quite a rabbit hole with of course, deceased voters voting, but also registrations that have their voter history deleted and all sorts of crazy things. So we call it the Dead Voters Society right now, but we also are working on NCOA and duplicate registrations. Our hand counting is part of our election integrity efforts, civic education, and of course, the committee strategy, precinct strategy. And I just wanted to show you some of what we found for NCOA. Raj, if you could flip screens or slides. Everybody knows how people have been voting with their feet and moving out of New York State. You can see this in our voter rolls. Over 500,000 NCOA moves out of New York State before November 2024, and they were still on the rolls in the 2024 general election. We've identified about 23,000 people who moved out prior to the November general election for president, but they also voted for New York State, and we're trying to identify if they're double votes, if they're registered elsewhere, and if they've also voted. Next slide. Interestingly, since November, over 500,000 voter registrations were removed from the New York State voter rolls. You can see that little chart on the left, that big giant bump that shows what got removed in February. It's kind of interesting compared to the rest of the chart. So they did some massive cleaning up in the last couple of months post-presidential election, our Board of Elections across the state. And still, though, we have over 400,000 voters who have never voted since they got registered for 5 to 10 years is what I quoted there, but the other chart is all of it from 0 to 10. Next slide. So we're hoping people on this call, if you know anybody in New York, if you're from New York, to join the fight, volunteer, donate, host an event, attend one of our meetings. You can go to our website, projectcivica.org. You can reach out to me at kimh@projectcivica.org. We're trying to create teams in regions and counties. So we need skilled volunteers, we need leaders, we need people willing to get involved and get into the fight and help us save New York. It's a beautiful state, and there's a lot of work to do here, but we have high hopes, and we're very excited at some of the progress we've already made across the state. So thank you so much for having me, Steve, and having Project Civica on the call.
Thank you very much for coming on. The next we're going to have Ray Michaels, a good friend of mine, with his brother Norm.
Lisa is back on. You want to bring it back?
I am on. Yes. Thank you so much. I don't know why Zoom keeps dropping me off. So I am also the state coordinator for My Faith Votes. And I'm just going to let everyone know that you can get a hold of me simply by sending an email to editor@the, that's THE, libertybell.press, PRESS. One of the things we've done in Montana is we have pulled different patriot groups to contribute to a 15,000 copy newspaper. We're a small state. We have
Yeah, she's having problem probably with the internet there.
Copy that.
Let's get Ray on, and we'll just tell her we'll get her on another time.
Got it. Ray, go ahead, Ray. Go ahead and unmute.
Ray is with totalnews.com and Arizona Committee Man and Committee in Maricopa County, or in that area. One of our good friends. He is one of our podcasters that has our program on. Last time we got at least 15,000 views. So come on down.
All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome from the beautiful state of Arizona. The sun is shining, blue skies. So it's a lot of fun here. Thank you, Steve, for having me on. Of course, I'm representing totalnews.com as well as grassroots50.com and GR50 Free Press. So as Steve mentioned, I am a precinct committeeman as well as a state committeeman and a legislative district chair here in Maricopa County. And I was actually a national delegate to the RNC convention just this last summer. So lots of great things that are happening right now. I just wanted to give you an update on a few of those things. It was, the Republican National Committee won 3 lengthy discussions and court battles just recently. Now, in addition to the one in Georgia with the labor union lawsuit win, and in Washington with the signature verification win, they actually won a Arizona Court of Appeals. This was brought by the AZ GOP out here against the Secretary of State, Adrian Fontes, as he did not substantially comply with the state's proper rulemaking process when finalizing the 2023 election procedure manual. This argued that Fontes' election procedure manual would weaken the safeguards against non-citizen voting, unlawfully limiting the ability to challenge early ballots, and he violated numerous provisions of state law to protect election integrity. So this was a really big case here in Arizona. And I'll tell you what, we are fighting so hard. We've got a lot of our legislative districts, especially in Maricopa County, going against really the establishment that's been here for a long time. So just recently, the Maricopa County, the Republican Committee of Maricopa County, we had a resolution come through. Now, let me give a little bit of background. So we have a board of supervisors that makes a lot of decisions, and the legislature has given the board of supervisor and the recorder's office the ability to hold our elections. And they've normally worked together for it, each having their own specific duties for the election. But before Stephen Richer, the last Maricopa County recorder, left, he made an organization which actually took away all of the power from the Maricopa County recorder, giving it fully to the board of supervisors. And so we as citizens have been going down there and trying to express our grievances, which, and First Amendment allows us to frequently address government for our grievances, and we've been shut down by the chair of the Board of Supervisors. And it's really taken a toll on election integrity and where we want to go with this. And so Maricopa County Republican Committee, the board, we actually send out a resolution from the Board of Supervisors. I got a little bit of it right here. Basically, what this does is we've already censured them, and it's kind of a three-part process. You censure them, you have a level of no confidence, and then you no support. So we are now at level 2, and we, as an EGC, Executive Guidance Committee, have voted for a vote of no confidence for Maricopa County Board of Supervisor Thomas Galvin as chairman for his failure to uphold the principles of a fair governance, public assembly, proper meeting conduct, election integrity, and the inability to control his own emotions, exemplified by the February 26th Board of Supervisor meeting. If you get a chance, go on there. He actually says, I've had enough with this. People were waiting to talk. They waited a couple hours to talk. We're on a list. And he said, no, I'm not going to hear from anybody anymore. Very, very disappointing. We also demanded that all newly elected Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, we have 3 additional Republicans, that they hold the current chairman, Thomas Galvin, accountable for his previous actions and elect a new chair. Now, we have 5 members of the Board of Supervisors, and 4 of them are Republican. 1 came over from the last election cycle. So we have 3 brand new ones. We're just saying, you know what, put somebody in who can actually chair the meetings and accept the grievances when citizens come to speak. So we also called for somebody who's a servant of the people, returning the high standards of leadership and restoring trust, transparency, and adherence to the established rules of order in all future decisions. And also we called upon him, demanded that he immediately reinstate the former shared, it's called the Shared Services Agreement, used by the previous 2 Maricopa County recorders in complete cooperation with our current Maricopa County recorder, and that's Justin Heap. So we're calling and demanding a lot of things via election integrity. You probably see my shirt here. That's what we're looking for here in Maricopa County. There's also a bill currently in the legislature. It's HB 2736. It's considered a cybersecurity infrastructure bill, but what it does is it actually increases the military involvement in our elections. Now, we have a great representative, Alex Colliden. He wrote something up on X, just saying how we should not have military involvement in our elections. In fact, he refers to the Arizona Constitution, which states in Article 2, Section 20, the military shall be in strict subordination to the civil power. Of course, all power is in the people, not the military. He further states in Section 21, all elections shall be free and equal, and no power, civil or military, shall at any time interfere to prevent the free exercise of the right to suffrage. And then Article 7, Section 5, no elector shall be obligated to perform military duty on the day of an election except in times of war or public danger. So he strongly recommends a big no on HB 2736 here in Arizona. So what we're doing as districts, we want to basically increase the training. I think another one of your speakers had said that people don't know about elections. They don't know what their rights are. It's not taught in schools anymore. So we really want to push training, education, and most of all, understanding. Because a lot of people, they miss the idea of you read it, you learn it, but you have to understand how it works. And all the power belongs to the people. I made a reference to the Board of Supervisors, and I said, you don't work for Maricopa County. You work for us. You work representing us at the county. So again, totalnews.com, grassroots50.com, GR50 Free Press. And we also, Steve, we got a big governor's race coming up. The country is watching our governor's race right here in Arizona.
Thanks very much, Ray. We appreciate it. Next up is Bernadette Smith. She's the vice chair of the Republican Party in Michigan.
ahead, Bernadette. You're up. Go ahead, Bernadette. Go ahead and unmute if you would. Go ahead and unmute on your Zoom.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, and if you want, I can hear you very well. If you want to turn your camera on, please do so.
Well, I'm in the car, so it's probably a little challenging. Is that all right?
No problem. No problem. Go ahead.
But next time I will. I promise I will. This event came up, and I had to be on the road. So thank you so much, Steve, and you guys for having me. It's an honor to be with you guys today. Like Steve said, I'm the co-chair. We were elected 3 weeks ago as co-chair of the Michigan Republican Party, which Jim Brunstad is the chair, which we're very, very excited about it. We want to right this ship here in Michigan. As you guys know, Michigan is a battleground state, and they need leadership that's going to be honest, integrity, and transparent. So I have an outline I would like to just share with you guys. Number one, we want to strengthening the conservative movement in Michigan. Conservative in Michigan are looking for strong leadership, and I think it's so important with the clear messaging to unify our party. But I often say this, it's so important that we unify, but we have to unify around the truth. We can't unify just to be unifying. We have to unify around what's right, and that's what's going to make us great and grow. There's a need for grassroots engagement to ensure the voices of everyday Michiganders are heard. That is so important. Transparency and accountability in political leadership, to me, it's essential for rebuilding trust in people. It's so important. And one thing I'm very grateful about, the grassroots, they overwhelmingly voted Jim and I in. We end up winning by 70%. So the grassroots, they were locked in. They were ready to see true leadership. And many of them have contacted us, so many of them, and said they can. So I'm paraphrasing. Breathe again. They're so happy they have people in leadership that they now feel like they can give money to. So we have people, county chairs calling me, throwing in money. It's so beautiful to see. Also, what's so important, as we're here on this call, we're talking about is election integrity and voter confidence. I think that's so important, ensuring fair and transparent election. That's a top priority for all conservatives. Advocacy for stronger voter ID laws and oversight of election processes. Addressing concerns about mail-in ballots and ballot harvesting. A problem we had in Michigan, it sounds like we had it in other states as well. I know last year when we were running for another position, 23 counties were disenfranchised. That is not acceptable. It's just not. So 23 counties who were duly elected by their counties, when they got to the state convention, they were not given the opportunity to vote. So they wanted to put in this, and I think it's pretty good. And my chair and I are talking about it. They wrote up a delegates Bill of Rights. And the whole reason for that is to stop the powers that be from disenfranchising the delegates, and that actually is it's illegal. It's a misdemeanor, to do that. So I don't know how they got away with it, but in the end, I believe we're going to win in every area, because I truly believe that light will dispel the darkness. We just have to keep fighting. We have to keep fighting with truth. We cannot quit. The enemy, whoever that may be, they're totally dependent on us to give up and surrender. But it's impossible. We cannot surrender, and we will not quit, and we will get the victory. I truly believe that. Another one is economic policies that support hardworking Michiganders, lowering taxes and reducing government overreach to support small businesses and job creation. Fighting inflation and ensuring promoting policies that make Michigan a friendly state. That is so important. So many people are leaving Michigan, as going to Florida, going to North Carolina, going to Atlanta. We see that. Or we want to stop that. Safeguarding against government censorship. I think that's so important. We cannot stop. Upholding parental rights in education and resisting government overreach in schools. Education reform and parental rights. Advocating for school of choice and curriculum transparency. Ensuring that parents not have the final say in their children's education. Also removing political agendas from the classrooms and focusing on core academics. Last year, my husband, he ran for school board. We moved out of one city and we moved to another city. So we were only there for just maybe a year or so. Maybe my husband said, I'm going to run for school board in this city. Well, he ran as with a group of other guys. My husband literally knocked close to 3,000 doors to get conservative on the school board. And we did just that. So, I mean, we have to walk the talk. We have to get out there and do it. And, and I believe he's going to do it again, just to make sure that our kids are not being fed like they are now, all this transgender woke agenda. One of our counties, they literally are allowing the kids to look at porn books and so forth. This has to stop, but it's going to stop with us continuing to fight and get in their face and said, we will not quit, and this giant must fall, and it will fall. Another thing is public safety and border security, so important. Supporting law enforcement and pushing back against efforts to defund the police. Addressing the impact of illegal immigration communities. Ensuring safe neighborhoods through strong crime prevention policies. I started noticing this some years ago when our kids were in school. We're in a great neighborhood, but I started noticing these apartments going up, and they're putting these apartments in these suburbs. And I was like, what is this? But then I began to recognize, even before it came on the news, I said, they're really trying to move people into neighborhoods to really run neighborhoods. These people are not asking to be moved into the suburbs. This is on purpose. It's a socialist agenda, which I think we have to push back on that. And I think it's so important that we do. If you ask the people that are moving in, they don't want to be in our neighborhoods either, right? So many of them don't. So I think this is just government overreach in many areas. Also, building strong conservative leadership at all levels. In Michigan here, we need strong conservative leaders, not only in high profile races like governor, like attorney general, secretary of state, and congressional seats, but we also need it at the local levels, which I think that's where it begins. General Flynn talked a lot about that. It begins at the local level. And I think for so long, we forgot that, but we're getting back on track. We're actively seeking principal conservatives to run for school boards, like I just mentioned, my husband, city councils, county commission, and other local offices. The future of our state is shaped at every level of government, and we must ensure that conservative values are represented at all levels. I heard someone on the line, earlier, few people had said, what's so sad, and it's really, really sad, guys, is that we have to fight our own party. That's not acceptable. We need to come against that as well. If you want to be a Democrat, go on the Democrat side. And I think we need to also be willing to expose that. So I think we have to continue to fight in that round too. Michigan's future and the conservative vision. Conservatives are focused on securing Michigan's prosperity for future generations. We want to encourage younger generations to get involved in politics and uphold the conservative values. Building a coalition of like-minded individuals to take back Michigan and restore conservative leadership. My husband and I have 8 children. We have 4 sons and one of our daughters in heaven, and 3 girls. Our youngest one passed away when she was just a young child. But I have 3 sons, and some of you may have heard of them. Titus and Isaac Smith. They're called the Smith Bros. They have about 1 million followers, and they're talking about the conservative message on YouTube, reaching their generation. And that's one area that my husband and I, as parents, we want to bridge that gap between the youth, right, and the elderly. Not that we're elderly, right, but the older. It's so important. So that's our focus as well. These young people, they're really conservative, and so we love the youth. We're having youth outreaches and so forth, because I think that gap needs to be bridged with the youth. So that's something that we're focusing on here in Michigan, which I think is so important that we keep that movement going, because that's the next generation. So I'm very excited to be a part. I'm so excited that I was chosen and elected by the delegates to be the co-chair of the Michigan Republican Party. And I believe with God's help and hard work, we are going to make a difference, and we're going to right this ship.
Thank you very much, Bernadette. We appreciate you coming on. I know you're driving in. So we're closing this down today. Raj will say a couple things. I'll say a couple things. Can you put me on the screen, Raj?
Yes, you are on the screen and full screen.
So, first thing I'd like to say, Steve Bannon came in. We made a shirt for him. We've sold it, tons of them. If you go to standwithbannon.com, you can still get some of these shirts. We love him. He came on, the busiest guy that I know. A lot of people asked me how I get a hold of him. I texted him at 4:30 this morning, made sure that he was coming on. He got me on for a few minutes. We got 100 people that signed up from the show. Also, I ask everybody to follow me on Stern American. If you are on Twitter, please go to Stern American and sign up. We're going to have a lot of information. Remember, the more voice we have, the better it's going to be, the better the people are going to be on. As I told you before, the first time the RNC actually texted me back, Dan Sbriglio, voice of the people, a great guy. He drove down from Maine on our last election security call. He got about 2 million people or more on it. We want to tell you that the next one is going to be April the 3rd, a couple of weeks on a Thursday. We hope everybody goes on. It's going to take me about 4 days to answer all the chats that came from every place. We copied them all down. I have Melissa working on that. Thank you, Anthony, Melissa, Samantha. Takes a lot of work to put this on. Just getting the people to speak is a tough job. Raj will tell you that it's a tough job just getting the people to come on and be there with the technical problems and everything that's going to happen. So I'm going to turn this over to Raj. I want to thank everybody for helping us. We do this all for the good of the country. There's no money involved. We actually put out a lot of money for this thing. The flag shirt spends a lot of money making this happen so that we, the people of the United States, will get the message out. Anybody who would like to get on, please, if you have a message, go to stern1054 send me an email. I will return that. I want to thank Raj. I mean, he's got to put up with me texting him and calling him every day. And thank you very much, everybody.
Oh, thank you, Steve. And fantastic, again, to the whole team. Okay, so a couple of announcements just before we end. First, again, this event was brought to you by theflagshirt.com. Please go to theflagshirt.com and buy something awesome like this shirt, like the shirt that you saw from Steve. Fabulous gifts. I can't tell you how many compliments I get on this. In fact, I wore this shirt in Washington, D.C., and someone snapped a picture, and one of the national podcasters, and a lot of people got to see that shirt. But people get encouraged when you walk around with a shirt like this. So please make sure you do that. Also, if you are watching this on one of our streaming platforms, please text word elections to 91776. Text word elections to 91776. Why? Because that'll put you on a list where we send you updates on what is happening, and you can get your information directly from Steve Stern and I, if you'd like to do that. And lastly, in addition to the flag shirt, please go to trumpetleadershipbootcamp.com, trumpetleadershipbootcamp.com, if you want to get your leadership and train your team and take it to the next level and push back at these guys that are trying to still destroy our country. So with that said, there's one other thing that I wanted you to do. One of my team members wanted me to show you this. So we have a new campaign, and I would encourage you also to pick this up on your end here. And what this campaign is we're going to share with you right now. This is on defendflorida.org. If you click on the resources button, scroll all the way down to the green button here. If you would like to get the Twitter handles, phone numbers, and email addresses of legislators in Florida, go to florida.org, click on this blue button here, and you can see them, right? And why would you do that? Because in your state, if you take a similar campaign and you start applying pressure, political pressure on X, it seems to be helping quite a bit. So please do that. And lastly, before I leave, I'm going to leave the Zoom call about 30 seconds on, because if you would like to share your X handle, your Twitter X handle, put it in the chat, and we will take that information and make it available to people that are attending this call. So you want to get more visibility to your X handle, all you got to do is put your X handle in the chat. We'll put it together and make it available. So that is available for you. Otherwise, the call is done now. Again, I'm going to leave the call on just for 30 seconds so that if you want.
Thanks for watching, guys. If we don't have clean, fair elections, we don't have a country. Just like if we don't have good immigration policies to keep these bad people out, we don't have a country. So thank you very much for watching, and I love you all. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.